I've picked up hitchhikers before, but only one of them was already dead. I just didn't know it at the time. It was November, 3 years ago. I was driving back from a conference in Portland, taking the coastal route because I like the ocean at night. The rain had been coming down in sheets for hours, the kind of rain that makes your wipers useless and turns the road into a dark mirror that swallows your headlights before they reach 30 feet. Around mile marker 47, my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A figure, arm extended, thumb out. In that weather at that hour, nearly midnight, I almost kept driving, but something I still cannot explain made me stop. She was young, maybe 20 years old. Dark hair plastered to her face, clothes soaked completely through, water dripping from her chin. She didn't have a coat. In 40-degree November rain, she got in without saying a word, just nodded once when I asked if she was okay. The car filled with the smell of wet earth and something else. Something metallic, something ancient. I asked where she was headed. She pointed forward without speaking. I asked her name. Nothing but the sound of rain hammering the roof. After what felt like miles, she whispered an address, barely audible over the storm. Ashwood Lane, number 12. Her voice had no warmth, no breath, like words spoken into a hollow pipe. I knew the area vaguely. Old neighborhood on the outskirts of town. Halfway abandoned even before the recession. We drove in silence for 20 minutes. The heater was on full blast, but the car never got warm. My breath started to fog the windshield from the inside. I kept glancing at her in the passenger seat. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Just stared through the glass like she was looking at something I couldn't see, something beyond the rain and the darkness. When we turned onto Ashwood Lane, there were no streetlights, no porch lights, no sign that anyone had lived there for a very long time. Number 12 was at the dead end, barely visible through the sheets of rain. The house was a skeleton, burned out completely, charred beams jutting against the night sky like blackened ribs. I turned to ask if this was really where she needed to go, and then the passenger seat was empty. The door was still closed, still locked from the inside, but the fabric of the seat was soaked where she had been sitting, water pooling in the seams, and on the floor mat, a small puddle of rainwater was already beginning to evaporate, as if it had never been there at all. I drove home on autopilot, my hands locked around the steering wheel, like it was the only solid thing left in the world. The next morning, I couldn't let it go. I searched for Ashwood Lane, house fire, young woman. It took me 3 hours of digging through local newspaper archives before I found what I was looking for. The article was dated November 14th, 2004. A house fire on Ashwood Lane. An elderly couple had survived with minor injuries after a neighbor pulled them out. Their granddaughter, home from college for Thanksgiving weekend, did not. She had been trapped in the upstairs bedroom when the staircase collapsed. Her name was Emily Kern. She was 19 years old, and here is the part that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. According to the article, she had been trying to hitchhike home that night. Her car broke down on the coastal highway. In the rain, someone picked her up and dropped her at Ashwood Lane. 2 hours later, the house was on fire. I still drive that route sometimes, and every time it rains, every single time, I slow down at mile marker 47. I've never picked up another hitchhiker, but sometimes when the rain is heavy and the road is empty, and my breath starts to fog the windshield, I swear I can still smell wet earth and something metallic, something ancient, and for just a moment, the passenger seat feels cold. You learn to read people on the road, truckers especially. We spend so many hours alone that we become experts at the small things. The way someone holds their hands, the way their voice catches on certain words, the way they smile, and the way their smile stays exactly the same no matter what you say or do. I was hauling a load of lumber through central Nevada. Route 50, they call it the loneliest road in America, and for good reason. Middle of nowhere, middle of the night, 3 in the morning, and the highway was empty, except for me and the stars and the endless sagebrush. And then a man in a suit, standing on the shoulder like he was waiting for a bus, in the desert, at 3 in the morning, wearing a charcoal suit that looked expensive and perfectly pressed, not a speck of dust on him. And I remember thinking, that is not possible. We hadn't passed the town in 80 miles. I pulled over anyway. Trucker code. You don't leave someone stranded in the middle of the Nevada desert at 3 in the morning, even if every instinct you have is screaming at you to keep driving. He climbed into the passenger seat with smooth, deliberate movements that made no sound at all. Then he turned his head toward me and smiled, and every hair on my body stood up. The smile was wide, very wide, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that doesn't belong to any expression a human face should make. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, like old ice, and they did not blink, not once, not the entire time he was in my truck. Thank you for stopping, he said. His voice was too calm, too even, like someone had recorded a pleasant voice and played it back at the wrong speed. Tell me, driver, do you have a family? I said yes, wife, 2 kids. Your wife. Is her name Margaret? My stomach dropped into a cold pit, because my wife's name is Margaret, and there is no earthly way this stranger could have known that. How do you know my wife's name? I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. The smile didn't change, didn't flicker. And your youngest, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. The boy, he is, 7 years old now. My throat closed. He has nightmares, the man said, his voice still perfectly pleasant. About the closet door, the one at the end of the hallway. He dreams that it opens by itself, that something with long fingers reaches out. My son was 7. He had been having those exact night terrors for 3 weeks, and no one in the world, knew about them except me and my wife. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white and stared straight ahead at the highway. I was afraid, genuinely, deeply afraid, to look at the man beside me, but eventually I couldn't help myself. I glanced at the rearview mirror to see his reflection. His reflection was wrong. In the mirror, his smile was deformed, stretched impossibly wide, well past his ears, splitting his face into something that wasn't human. His eyes weren't pale anymore. They were black hollows, empty sockets that seemed to swallow the light from the dashboard. And his mouth was moving, forming words. Even though in the seat beside me, he was perfectly still, not a muscle twitching, not a sound escaping his lips. Pull the truck over, he said, but his real mouth, the one next to me, never moved. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. I slammed the brakes so hard, the trailer fishtailed across both lanes. Closed my eyes, counted to 3, counted to 10. When I finally opened them, shaking, sweating, barely able to breathe, the passenger seat was empty. The door was still closed, still locked. I drove straight through to the next truck stop, 140 miles. I didn't sleep for 2 days. When I finally called home, Margaret answered on the first ring. She said everything was fine, better than fine. Before she hung up, she mentioned that our son had slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no closet door. I never picked up another hitchhiker. But sometimes, when I'm alone on a long stretch of desert highway with nothing but sagebrush and stars, I check the rearview mirror more often than I need to. And I never, ever let my eyes drift to the passenger seat. Some people say you should never pick up hitchhikers. They're wrong. You should never pick up the ones who aren't really hitchhiking. The ones who are standing on the shoulder, not waving, not signaling. Just watching your car approach like they've been expecting it. Like they've been waiting specifically for you. I work the night shift at a small hospital in Colorado. Won't care. It is not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I'm good at it. My shift ends at 2 in the morning, and the drive home takes 40 minutes. Winding mountain roads. No cell service for most of it. Just the dark and the trees and the occasional pair of deer eyes glowing in your high beams. That night, I was exhausted. A burn victim had come in at 11, third degree across 40% of the body. We spent hours debriding wounds, and if you don't know what that means, trust me, you don't want to. By the time I got in my car, all I could think about was my bed and how far away it felt. About 5 miles from the hospital, my headlights caught a figure on the shoulder, an elderly man, white hair, a worn leather satchel clutched to his chest with both hands. He was standing perfectly still, not walking, not hitchhiking, just standing there like a statue, facing the road. He didn't raise his thumb, didn't wave, just turned his head slowly as I approached, his eyes tracking my car. I should have kept driving. I knew it then, and I know it now. But he looked cold, and old, and I'm a nurse. We stop. Thank you, dear, he said as he settled into the passenger seat. His voice was soft, almost grandfatherly, but there was something underneath it. The satchel stayed on his lap, both hands wrapped around it like it contained something more precious than life itself. Where are you headed? I asked, forcing a polite tone. Oh, I go where I'm needed, dear. I go where I'm needed. His voice had a strange quality, like an echo arriving just before the words. We drove in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Then, without warning, he opened the satchel. Would you like to see? He asked. But he was already pulling out photographs, Polaroids, dozens of them, each one different, each one carefully handled, like religious artifacts. He handed me the first one, a mangled sedan wrapped around a pine tree. Emergency lights painting the scene red and blue, a body bag being loaded into an ambulance. That was last Tuesday, he said, entirely matter of fact. Route 9, just past the reservoir. A young man drunk. He didn't feel a thing, if that is any comfort. I was horrified, but I could stop looking. He kept handing them to me, one after another. A rollover on an icy bridge. A head-on collision at an intersection that should have had a stoplight. A motorcycle crushed under the wheels of a semi. And every single time, he knew the exact date, the exact road. He spoke about them the way a doctor speaks about patients, with clinical precision and something that almost sounded like compassion. Then he stopped. His hand hovered over a photograph, still resting inside the satchel, his fingers trembling slightly. This one, he said, his voice dropping to barely a murmur. This one hasn't happened yet. He pulled the photograph out slowly, held it up to the dashboard light so I could see every detail. It was my car, my license plate, my face behind a shuttered windshield, eyes wide and glassy, blood trailing down my forehead. In the background, a familiar curve of mountain road, a curve I would reach in about 15 minutes. I'm sorry, dear, he said, and his voice was genuinely sad now, genuinely mournful. It is tonight, I'm afraid, about 3 miles ahead. Black ice on the curve. You'll hit the guardrail and go over. It will be quick, I can promise you that much. He told me to pull over, said that he would walk from there. It was almost polite, the way he said it, almost kind. I watched him in my rearview mirror as I pulled away. An old man standing on the dark shoulder of a mountain road, satchel in hand, already scanning the pavement for the next set of headlights. I drove home at 15 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. At the curve, I stopped completely. Got out, walked to the guardrail. The road was dry, no ice, no frost, no danger that I could see. but the guardrail had fresh damage, bent outward, scraped with silver paint, the same silver as my car, and 50 feet below, at the bottom of the ravine, I could just barely make out the shape of a vehicle. The same vehicle from the photograph, my vehicle, already there, already waiting for me. I still work the night shift. I still drive that road every single night. And sometimes, when the hour is late and the mountain is quiet, I see a figure standing on the shoulder ahead of me. White hair, leather satchel, patient as stone. I don't stop anymore. But every time I pass him, I wonder, who is he waiting for tonight? And where will he be when the photograph finally comes true?